Well, let's turn our attention now to the Prime Minister's environmental policies as they came under attack last night, and it came from a fellow Liberal during a party fundraiser. Bonnie Crombie is the Ontario Liberal leader, and in a speech she gave at that fundraiser, she said, quote, "I'm not here to tell the Prime Minister how to do his job, but I promise you I will tell him when he's wrong, like on the carbon tax." The Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, was asked about that comment today. Here's what we heard.
Are you saying Ms. Crombie's not showing leadership? Are you saying she's a weak leader? Are you saying she's not showing leadership?
I'm saying that it's tough to fight climate change, and being a leader is doing difficult things sometimes, even if they're unpopular, but they're the right thing to do.
Well, for more, we're now joined by the Minister for the Environment, Stephen Guilbeault. Minister, thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure, Michael.
So listen, let's begin with the reaction to the deal signed in COP29. The deal essentially developed to help countries adapt to climate change, $300 billion a year by 2035. That is the amount that's been successfully negotiated. But as you know, one delegate called it a joke because climate experts say the real amount needed would be over $1 trillion a year. Is this deal really something to celebrate?
I think it is. First, $300 billion per year is triple the previous amount that was agreed upon. So it's 3 times more. And we've always understood it, and I'm not debating that 1 trillion number, and most experts would agree on that. But it was clear from the beginning that all of that money wouldn't be able to come just from governments. I mean, of course, governments have an important role to play, but we need to have on board multilateral institutions, regional development bank, the World Bank, the International Monetary Funds, and the private sector. This is how we will get from $300 billion to 1 trillion. And a very good example of that is a fund that I announced when I was in Baku called Gaia. And it's a fund where, with a little over $150 million of Canadian public money, we will be able to mobilize $2 billion for developing countries, small island state, and 70% of those dollars will be for adaptation project, which is a key priority for them. So that's how we get from $300 billion to $1 trillion, by using public dollars as a catalyst to get more money from other sources so we can multiply those investments.
Mm-hmm. Does it at all indicate a growing fatigue, though, amongst countries to put the environment as a top agenda item when many people in their own countries are dealing with inflationary pressures, trying to make ends meet? Is there a fatigue setting in that prevented a larger figure, though?
I don't think so. I think it was clear to me from the beginning, and clear to most, like those who, honestly, Michael, those who say that they seriously thought that governments would be able to mobilize just by themselves $1 trillion are being dishonest. They knew this was never going to happen. The question is, how do we get there? And that's exactly what the agreement that was agreed upon in Baku enables us to do. Like you mobilize a lot of public funds. And for those who think, like, why should we be doing that? Why should Canadian dollars be used in the developing world? Well, for a number of different reasons. I mean, one, those countries are suffering a lot from the impacts of climate change, and they didn't contribute. And the more we can help those countries face the impacts of climate change, the less we will see international massive migratory issues all around the world, because people will be able to stay home, which is what they want. And thirdly, Michael, we have to realize that often when we make those investments, often it will be with Canadian technologies and Canadian know-how that we will do in partnership with these countries. So it is good for the environment, it is good for the economy, and it's good for people. Except
that, you know, in terms of this country, we have a very near neighbor, close ally in the United States. Donald Trump will be inaugurated come January. And already he says once inaugurated, he will pull the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement. He'll reverse a number of climate actions of the Biden administration. Can we afford to be out of step with the United States, given how closely our two countries operate with each other, and given the burden sharing on so many things with the United States? If they're not in it, does it still make sense for Canada to be as invested?
Well, a couple of things I'd like to say about that. The first is that when President Biden was president last time, he did pull the United States out of the Paris Accord. And we kept going, because it's not about one country, it's about 194 countries. Number two, when I was in Baku, I met with a number of U.S. Delegates, including representatives from U.S. states. There were more than 20 U.S. states represented in Baku by governors and ministers from the Minister of Energy from California, with whom I had a lovely conversation about how we can continue collaborating together and working together. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. They want to continue working with Canada on transitioning, on investing in clean technologies, on investing in renewable energies, on protecting nature. And California is one of those many states in the U.S. who, regardless of what happens at the federal level, will continue to work on these things, and they will be looking for partners. And I think Canada is an ideal partner for a great many of these states.
Okay, except that Donald Trump is also looking for partner, perhaps in different areas, though. And here you have the Prime Minister traveling down to Mar-a-Lago on Friday to have dinner with Donald Trump, trying to preserve Canadian trade with the United States. And we know on that level, Donald Trump is very interested in Canadian energy. He in fact needs Canadian oil to get gas prices down in the United States, an election promise that he made. How will Canada meet that demand if, for example, Ottawa is putting an emissions cap on Canada's oil and gas industry? Because we are hearing from Premier Danielle Smith saying that emissions cap will affect the amount of exports we can get to the United States when the U.S. actually wants more oil and gas from Canada.
Well, we'll have to see what happens to our energy exports to the U.S. Obviously, if President Trump wants to impose a 25% tariff on all things Canadians. But the second thing is that, and Premier Smith knows that very well, the cap on pollution we're putting in place will allow production of oil and gas to increase by 2030. About half of what we're asking companies to do in terms of reducing their pollution can be done through existing technologies, and technologies where those companies will make money by reducing their pollution, reducing methane emission, for example, very powerful greenhouse gas. And you will see a number of U.S. states continue to invest in these technologies as well. And the reality is that we are heading into a world where, according to the International Energy Agency, the demand for oil is going to be reduced by 5–6% by 2030. And so those producers of oil will have to make sure that they can lower their emissions as much as they can, because that's where the demand will come from. People will want to have energy projects and energy products that have the lowest impact on the environment as possible. And that's why we're setting the stage for Canada to be able to compete on the world stage with these new circumstances.
Okay, so setting the stage is your argument. But, you know, I wonder, because you've been in the environmental game long before coming to Ottawa, I wonder if you are worried, though, about the environmental legacy of this country in the next few years down. Because on the one hand, you have Donald Trump coming in January, and here at home, your government will be facing another election campaign within the calendar year. I'm wondering if you're worried about environmental policy going forward.
Well, I mean, I think we have a lot to show in terms of what we've done, what our government has done to put forward the issue of environmental protection and clean air and clean water for Canadians. Our pollution is at its lowest level in 25 years. We've never seen pollution go down in Canada while the economy was going up the way it is now. We've substantially increased nature protection all across the country. We weren't protecting 1% of our oceans and coastline in 2015. We're almost at 16% protection. But of course, this could be jeopardized if Pierre Poilievre becomes Prime Minister of Canada, because just like Donald Trump, really, he wants to repeal a number of our rules, regulations, and laws to protect Canadians from environmental harms, to protect Canadians from the impacts of climate change. This is what Pierre Poilievre will do. So yes, part of me is worried, but obviously I will continue working hard to protect Canadians and to ensure that we can have the best legacy possible when it comes to environmental protection and the type of planet we leave to our kids and grandkids.
Mr. Stephen Guilbeault, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Michael.